Let's take a look at how we would diagnose a breech leak in our pretty DSR Plus that we've got. And so a breech leak, as defined, is one that's coming out of the feed neck or the front or down the barrel, like if you just got done playing. And Dye has listed out a variety of different O-rings to replace at once when this problem arises, which that's fair. It's easier to kind of replace everything when you've got it apart, but let's talk about maybe how to diagnose those individually, and talk about what each one of those O-rings does. And that way, maybe you don't have to use an entire piece of your O-ring kit or an O-ring kit that maybe you're getting from us to solve a problem. So we'll move this out of the way here. DSR Plus engine. This one has the Pro Kit in it. Not really going to matter for the sake of our chat here. But so when Dye breaks down a breech leak repair, they diagnose a variety of O-rings, like I've said. So we're going to take off this can. We're going to pop the bolt out by just pushing on the face of the bolt. Push that out. Okay, this is going to separate all of our pieces out here, and we'll get to another one later. So there's some really kind of main culprits in a breech leak and most markers. And if they've got a O-ring on the face, which most of them do, this is going to be your number one kind of change. And the reason is because it's going to take the biggest beating out of any O-ring probably in the entire bolt system for most guns. And why that is because this bolt is going in and out of your breech, right? It's collecting dust, it's collecting all kinds of whatever's in there. Nasty whatever's that's on your paint that you have, maybe even broken paint that accidentally gets in your breech, and it's pulling that back through or onto this O-ring. And then let's say you continue to cycle your mid-game, you've got a nasty breech leak or breech break, whatever, and it's gonna just wreck this O-ring. So like I said, this one is going to be your main culprit, your main one to dig into and replace. The next one that they talk through is the outside O-ring here. Usually not going to be the issue, and that's because it's not dynamic, right? As long as it's lubricated and we don't nick it on something, as we put it into the gun itself, then not going to be a problem generally. But this is one that you can look at as well. Now the other culprits that Dye outlines are the one on the end of this reaction rod, and then also this one on the bolt guide. Makes sense there, right? That's because this bolt has these two pieces in it, and it's cycling back and forth and creating drag on these two things, which is really important to understand that like these are dynamic, and dynamic materials will be helpful in these two positions as well. So these are two O-rings that you'll take a look at, and one of the last ones is going to be this. We're going to unscrew this back cap here, and it's going to try and shoot off because this spring has an ungodly amount of tension on it. And then there's going to be this one right here. So this is one of the other culprits as defined by Dye. And why that is because when the bolt is at rest, this entire volume chamber is filled up. And if this O-ring has a nick in it, because it does move back and forth slightly, if this O-ring has a nick in it, then that volume air is going to be leaking past here, and it's going to be leaking through this hole, which actually is attached or part of this hole right here. And so it's going to be coming out of the face of the reaction rod itself. So there is ways to kind of diagnose which particular O-ring you need to get rid of and replace. And the way to do that, or at least the way that I would do that if I was teching this gun, is using my handy dandy finger or a squeegee or whatever you have. And so what I would go through is I'd stick my pinky down the breech, and first I'd cover up this hole. If my breech leak goes away, then I know that more than likely it's going to be this O-ring right here. So then I can replace that, relubricate the gun, test it, and it's more than likely fine. If that doesn't solve the problem, then my next step is to put my pinky over the face of the bolt. Okay, if the leak stops, then I know that it's more than likely either our bolt guide or our reaction rod O-ring. And actually, I'll probably just replace both of them because they more than likely get equal wear. Okay, so if that doesn't solve the problem and we're still getting a leak once we've put our pinky over the bolt face, then we know that it's going to be coming out of this O-ring right here. And like I said, more than likely this is going to be your culprit, but we've kind of ruled everything else out, saved ourselves some O-rings, and then we can replace that. And then again, if that doesn't fix it, then it's this outside can O-ring here. So, like I said, we take some steps to really check where the leak's coming from before you go all ham and replace all the O-rings all at once. In that way you can save yourself a little bit of time. You can save yourself a little bit of the gear that you have in your bag and the O-ring sets that you have. And replacing with high quality O-rings are going to make these last even longer, specifically materials that are made for dynamic movement. All O-rings are not meant for dynamic movement, or at least produced for dynamic movement. And so that's kind of what we do with some of the O-rings that we produce, and the O-ring kits that we produce. They're meant to be in the spaces that they're in. So dynamic O-rings are going to go in dynamic spaces such as here and here, and non-dynamic O-rings are going to go here, and different materials are going to help you out in both of those spaces. So hopefully that's helpful for you as you go through and tech your Dye DSR. And if there's any other things that you'd like us to take a look at with these specific markers, just let us know in the comments.